whether they're giving you like that feels like temperature. I don't know if those are all real, actual temperatures.
They make it sound as though it is actual temperature.
Yes, but they used to break it out.
Yeah, right.
And now they don't do it anymore, so now I wonder.
Tell me how they figure out the difference between feels like and real.
I had to stop halfway through my workout, my exercise today, just to change, because I was, I was
Yeah.
soaked.
Well, he even said the water temperature down in Florida is like 95, 98 or something, so you can't even go in the ocean and cool off.
Yeah. It's hot when you go in the pool or the ocean and it's not refreshing.
Yeah, unreal.
I always wonder what happens with the fish that
Yep,
can't
okay.
survive in those types of ambient temperatures, and the temperature just creeps up on you. So do they just die and go to the bottom of the ocean?
I
Or?
was gonna say, they probably swim out deeper or go lower. They probably have ways of regulating their body temperature.
Yeah,
I don't know, something to Google when I get home.
yeah, that's right.
Kind of reminds me of the summer I spent in Vietnam, although I swear that was hotter and wetter, and that made it miserable.
Wow.
Well, I never had any problems with heat in Korea, but had problems with winter.
Well, at least, John, one thing we can say here, it may be hot, but at least anybody's shooting at
That's
us.
true. Well, depends on where you are, I guess.
Well, that's true. Yeah, stay away from downtown Atlanta.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock on the big clock on the wall, so I will call the meeting to order. You have each received copies of the minutes of our last meeting. Any changes or modifications to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
A second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, since I've already signed them, so there they are. Okay, we have the agenda, and it's pretty light except for review of the ordinance changes. Anybody have any corrections or changes that they wish to make to the agenda?
Nope.
If not, the
Let
agenda
me,
is,
let me ask this, on the second page, it says, on the back page of the agenda, it's got new business and Highlands and stuff. Is that,
Oh, the minutes.
that's from the last meeting,
Yeah.
Yes, that will be from
Okay.
our last meeting here.
Yeah.
making sure.
yeah, that was.
All right, so,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, well, then the agenda is approved as presented, so, Ron, it's all yours.
All right. So I just wanted to just jump right into the presentation again. I think we got mostly through chapter 2, but I did have a couple really relatively small updates or kind of more so expansions really on some ideas, just to kind of drive some points home a little bit. But I don't want to obviously spend obviously too much time, since it is a pretty lengthy presentation. But I definitely want to hear any questions you guys have at the end of each chapter, like we did last time. So.
Will you be starting with section 8.27?
I'm actually going to be, I'm going to continue the presentation. I think we left off at section, chapter 2. I think we got almost through chapter 2.
Well, again, according to the agenda, our first item is section 8.27. I don't think we approved that last meeting, did we?
Oh, no, we haven't. I was looking at the item above that one, presentation to commissioners.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was the,
Okay,
this one. No, the presentation on last time. That's another presentation that we have to do. Ordinance changes. What's the one with the ordinance changes?
Okay, I was like,
Yeah, we had two. That's the one for next time. All right, cool. Perfect. This is it. And I don't know if you guys want to come over on this side, it might be easier to see, or.
Well, I sure can't see them from this chair.
Okay, all right. Whatever you guys want to do to get comfortable, just so you can see the,
Are you
presentation.
showing up here what we have here?
It's gonna be a full overview of all the ordinance changes that I'm proposing for tonight, everything on the agenda.
Will we be through by
I won't be able to see
midnight?
it from back there.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Will we be finished by midnight?
I believe we will be finished much sooner than that. We got through 2 chapters last time, but I know we had a lot of questions on one of those chapters, so, I think we should be able to get through some of them, most of it at least. Yeah, we will, so, yep. All right, so, we went over last time the change of use application, because in our office, anytime that if you guys can conceptualize this, anytime you have a business that wants to open in Villa Rica that's in an area that it's a permitted use, we have an additional, a step 2, as I call it, where it's not just a matter of, okay, you can get your business license, right? We have to make sure that the right amount of parking is there, being that the use is changing, so there's a different amount of parking that might be required for one use versus another. There's also lighting and various different development regulations that we would usually apply to a new building, but obviously we have a lot of old sites in the city, and we need to, our goal is to bring them up to compliance with the current zoning ordinance, so it's a better product. And so because of that, that's caused some issues as of late, as of what we can do, as what we should be applying on new businesses. And so we went over this chart last time. This is going to be pretty important because it really affects all property in Villa Rica, particularly commercial and industrial. So basically if it's which is most of the time, it's going to be an existing structure already on the lot. A building just wants to move in, or a business just wants to move in, but they're changing the use from, say, a retail use to, say, a restaurant. Both of them are commercial, both of them are permitted in the zone, but because the lot hasn't been developed to the new zoning ordinance standards, we don't have a development plan on record for it, they need to really go through that process of being able to bring it up to a conformity. And so if that's the case, if it's on a lot that's undeveloped, and it can't be an undeveloped lot with an existing structure, right? So that's not applicable. An existing structure on an underdeveloped lot, meaning a lot that can have more capacity to it than what they're currently using it for. It's very under capacity.
Do you envision any particular problems with businesses now? I mean, this is kind of like Liberty Point, in a way, similar kind of problems. Do you envision any difficulty with businesses?
Well, we've tried to apply this a couple times already, and it's already law. It's already, it's already law in the sense that a change of use requires further review. And so we've gotten some negative feedback from different businesses that have to go through the process because they think, well, it just should be as simple as me just getting a business license and opening. But I guess from a planning and zoning perspective, if we don't get conformance as the tenants are changing over and turning over, then there's no way to actually get compliance to your zoning ordinance on older sites that it came before the zoning ordinance was in existence. So that should be a number one main priority of planning and zoning for any town. It should be really to not just focus on new sites that are under construction, but what happens to the other sites, the older sites in town, because otherwise you're just going to get a hodgepodge of new and old, and less investment in the older sites over time, which has a snowball effect on real estate values and many other things. So
We have a number of facilities downtown that fall into this. So.
yes, yeah, anyone can really ride down Bankhead Highway and see site after site that's really an underdeveloped site that never really reached its potential, not well taken care of sites, poor investment or no investment in them, and a lot of that is probably because we should have been doing this over a period of time, 10, 20 years, by now you would see the results. Anyway, but if we do get existing structure that's in a developed building, so picture the Walmart shopping center, any real developed building or developed lot that's just has multiple tenants in it, for example, it would just be we're really just looking at parking at that point because it's already developed. It already has landscaping. It already has all the parking, probably ample parking for all the uses on site. So we just need to check that to make sure, because not every site is going to be a Walmart, right? Some sites are just going to be a smaller developed site. So underneath there, you'll see that there's some definitions that I'm proposing in order to kind of separate all these parcels in the city. So I address residential properties as well. You know, if you can see this last sentence here, any lot or parcel with an existing residential development or use that is below 8,500 square feet shall be classified as fully developed automatically. So that's basically our R2 zone. You know, automatically anything in the R2 zone is automatically a developed parcel. You know, there's a lot of lots in R1 that can be further subdivided, tons of them actually around town, so that zoning district may need to be split in the future. But I separated it out also if you're doing an expansion. Let's say you're moving into a property, changing the use, and you want to expand the property, it would basically follow the same rules for an underdeveloped site. But if it's a developed site already and you're expanding, then we still need to check lighting and parking and stuff because you're adding additional capacities on the lot. And new structures, same thing. That would follow all regulations, of course, as it does now. So I wanted to give you guys some examples. I didn't have this in the last iteration of this, but the landscape, let's use this as an example. This is South Van Wert Road and Bankhead Highway, so the church is across the street here. A landscape business wants to locate on this corner lot and is a permitted use. If you look at this lot here, we're talking about just this square, and what you're seeing here is this is a building. This is a small shed building that was built a long time ago. You can see there's holes in the roof, and this stores landscaping supplies. So at some point in time there was a landscaping use on the property, but it was never actually developed. There's no parking, there's no basically anything on the lot. We don't have an approved development plan or anything like that. The lot is undeveloped as it has no usable structures because they're condemned, and can be developed for uses in compliance with the underlying zone since it's permitted. So all development regulations should apply to this because they need to put in parking, lighting. They have to develop the site before they can actually use it. Another example here, a quick service restaurant wants to locate on the highlighted lot. The use is permitted in the zone. So this is the lot here. The lot is developed with a building and cannot reasonably feature additional commercial capacity. So we consider the lot is considered developed. So in that case, we would only be looking at parking regulations for the business.
So, Ron, your green lines there pass right through some parts of that lot that look like they have been developed already. What does that mean?
Well, this is this satellite image isn't the greatest because it's taken at kind of like a bird's eye view. So
Yeah.
This is kind of like a shadow, and they're just running the lines through it. But in actual reality, it goes between the buildings and it comes in between. It's just
okay.
from this angle, so it's hard to actually see.
Yeah,
that.
if you look at those maps, everybody's on each other's property.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not, and they even say not for use for legal.
And so
Yeah.
the quick service
Yeah.
restaurant is gonna use the existing structure?
Yeah, they would use the existing structure in this example, and basically they would have to only meet the parking requirements, meaning that there is some landscaping on the lot and things of that nature, but there needs to be some sort of a balance between someone being able to start their business and being able to locate somewhere without having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to bring a property up to conformance, which they may not have expected.
Okay.
So we're trying to give people some options in town in case they can't do that, they can locate to a different building before they sign a lease.
So if people are, I mean, this may be an oversimplification, but if you're not expanding over 35%, you're kind of grandfathered in, except for parking? And then if you go over 35% or over, then you're subject to all regulations and updates, current regulations.
Basically, yeah. If you're expanding, and that's the way that it currently is right now. If you're doing any expansions, if you're building a new building, you would have to meet our zoning regulations.
Yeah.
But it's just all the others is what we didn't know really what to do with.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Now here's another example. So this is Wilson Street, West Wilson and Westview Drive here. So this is Conscious Cravings, the smoothie place that's here. So let's say an office wants to locate on the shown lot. The use is permitted in the zone. These two are vacant buildings. The lot is developed with 3 buildings, 1 in use by a quick service restaurant and 2 vacant structures. The lot is considered underdeveloped as it can feature additional commercial capacity, as we can see here, because we have vacant structures on it. So in that case, all zoning regulations would be applicable, being that anything that comes in here, they would more than likely need to have additional parking than what they have already, if they were to utilize all 3 of these buildings based off of our parking table that we have today.
Is it undeveloped or underoccupied?
Underdeveloped.
Because as far as developed, you couldn't build any more buildings on there. So that seems to me like it's developed, it's just that they're vacant.
Right, so what do we call, what's considered developed versus vacant? And I guess that's a good point. You know, in this case, particularly, the structure, one of those structures is condemned, the one on the corner. So, you know, just like we had in the first example with the shed building, if something's condemned, even if it's a structure, yeah, that's, and I didn't mention that on the slide, and I didn't mention that in the definition either. I didn't say automatically condemned buildings are, you know, considered that, but, you know, if it's something that can't be used where we can give a business license to without pulling a permit, that to me is not really, is it really a developed site where someone can move in? So I had to kind of draw the line somewhere. And I felt like this was the fairest way to do so, in a way that would actually work, you know. In this particular case, this property owner knows they need to come forward and file for development plans and all of that, just like under the current law. So nothing would be changing here. I'm not actually proposing a change for this. This would actually be the same way as it is kind of today. It's just I separated this lot out as an underdeveloped lot. Trying to make that distinction in the ordinance, but
And when you say all zoning regulations would be applicable, you mean the new zoning?
yes, yep, the new zoning ordinance, they would have to be up to conformance with Chapter 7 of our ordinance, which is our development regulations. So a lot of the next stuff, this is all the same, just our government exemption that we were trying to do for municipal and county and state-owned properties. Oh, you wanted to read? So basically, I'm just saying here, we need to follow the development regulations, Chapter 7 of our ordinance, if we're going to develop something ourselves on our own land. So we essentially would be exempt from other sections of the ordinance. Use standards, for example, if it's not, you know, the city is not going to put a use somewhere that's definitely against the public welfare. We can't do that. I don't really think that it would really be too problematic, because that's pretty common in municipalities not to follow or not be subject to your own zoning ordinance, but it's always good practice to, you know, still go through the process just like any other applicant would do. So at least that's where I come from, at least, you know, when in the places that I've seen. So I always push that. This was the Chapter 2 stuff that we kind of went through. If there's something on here you guys want to talk about more. I did get a lot of notes from you guys. All right. Went through this, went through this. I'm just trying to see which ones we didn't go to yet. Actually, I wanna, we got past this. Okay, this section, okay. So there's actually an update to this language, I think, Kevin, that you wanted to
That's
do?
what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so this is actually for us to have, and I believe we wanted to vote on it tonight as well, right? No? Okay. All right, so this one's gonna probably change. This one's the new state rules, but the language is probably going to change for our actual individual, zoning ordinance, but this is the actual state law, copy and pasted here, but I was proposing to put something like this in our zoning ordinance. This goes over the new procedures, for, governing bodies to follow when, they are enacting or when they have how do I say it, like, I guess hearing procedures or hearing, like, ways to conduct an actual hearing. So the state has expanded upon that language from the original language that they had, and they've done quite a bit in expanding on what a zoning decision is. And so there's a huge, those are basically just rules that we would have to follow. All of our boards, our agencies, our council themselves, et cetera. So I just was gonna try to put that in the ordinance. This wasn't in the first go around.
Now, would the new committee come under this state law?
They're under the state law, but they're really not making any decisions.
Say that
They're
again?
advisory boards.
Sorry, would you say this, they're under state law, but,
But they're an advisory committee,
Yeah.
like this committee.
Okay.
So they will not be making zoning decisions. The new law, what we're looking at here is this language out of the statute itself. The zoning procedures law will be changed effective July first this year. It basically changed a couple of things. It added what they call quasi judicial, quasi judicial decisions. So if this board was more than advisory, if you were making zoning decisions, then we would have to follow the procedures of the Zoning Procedures Act as far as notice, how we conduct our hearings, and how appeals are taken from those hearings. Those are the major changes. So I think we're actually in compliance on most of those things, because the council is making most of those decisions. There are some actual decisions that are made at the staff level that would be considered zoning decisions under the new definition of a zoning decision. But here, we're usually advising. We recommend approval, we recommend denial, we recommend approval with conditions, and then somebody else is making that decision. So there's not gonna be a lot of applications in this community, but we do need to make sure
Mind if I trade you the keyboard for
the
the
council and staff are handling their hearings as compliant. Their appeals, it's a different way of taking appeals. Before you had to have certiorari, which was a complicated process. Most people with lawyers couldn't figure it out. And now it's just a notice of appeal, we just appeal to Superior Court. And we have to designate who accepts those appeals. So we have to tell them how to do it now. It's made that process a lot easier.
yeah. So this is, I'm sure this is coming up, if not tonight, soon, but I just want to be clear. So the council will now be advised by two different groups on the same projects or property?
Depending on where the problems are, yes.
If there'll be some overlap where they can get an advisory yay or nay or with conditions from P and Z, but also from the new, what's it called, the chair, joint committee?
Yes, the answer is yes.
So they're getting
It's crazy.
duplicate.
And which ones,
Yeah. Neither.
yeah, well, you know, I want to get into that.
And one may have a limited life.
Yeah, I know you're gonna get into it, I wanted to, but I don't wanna jump ahead, but I just had to ask that.
Yeah.
All right, so one other thing in chapter two that we, right at the end of chapter two, we didn't put in here, what we're gonna go over, which is the joint city, school board committee language, so we'll go over that in a moment, after the presentation. We're ready to vote. Chapter three, was the nonconformity section. I didn't change anything there. It works great, no issues, haven't had any issues. And it's very intricate language, so don't really want to touch that one unless I absolutely have to. Chapter 4 is the introduction of a new zone, the I-3 Warehouse Distribution and Logistics District. We revised the warehouse and distribution facilities use, permissibility in what zoning categories in industrial and OMI. So it's currently permitted in the OMI zone, which was probably an error or an oversight. So I'm removing that, proposing to remove that, proposing to make it a special exception in the I-1 and the I-2 zone, where it's currently permitted, I believe, in both. And we're proposing to make it permitted in the I-3 zone. So we don't have a location, and we'll get into this stuff, but we don't have a location for where we're looking to have the I-3 zone yet. We just know this is kind of more like a planning idea. And then when we are ready to establish a new distribution facility park, then this would probably be the zoning for that.
Wouldn't some of those proposals out on Rockmart Road for the truck parking, and there was a big bunch of warehouses in back of that, wouldn't that come under this?
It would be, that zoning category is I-2 still. So, for example, the warehousing would probably not be able to move forward under this if it was still in the I-2 zone unless they got a special exception permit. Otherwise, as of right now, the door is basically open for all warehousing facilities, and we have very limited land left for industrial facilities in general. So, I think if we're going to establish new land, I guess, or take more land in for an I-3 zone or more industrial uses in general, we need to kind of tailor it better. If we're really trying to court warehouses and distribution, we should probably make a code that's friendly to that. Because as of right now, it's just kind of squashed in with all non-conforming design standards, and there's a whole bunch of different uses that are permitted in the district that in the I-2 district that we could probably better see in a more separated out district, much more like difficult uses, I'll say, beyond just warehouses. So we'll see some more of that in a minute here.
You don't happen to have handy, I guess I should know, but the I-1, crap, I'm sorry.
I-1, I-2.
I-1, I-2, and I-3, where we are, what, I don't know what the heck is going on with this town in the trucking and distribution business, but where that is generally, those areas? Are they in town?
Yeah, well, they're mainly separated out on the borders of the town, on north of the highway. So the area up Industrial Boulevard, for example, is all I-2 zone land. The area on Liberty Road, south of the highway, is I-1. The area near the spur at Highway 78, off of Mary Lake Boulevard, all the area to the east going to Douglas County is I-2 as well. So those are the two major places for I-2, and then I-1, the major places over Liberty Road.
Sorry, this is just such a thing for me. Trucking and logistics and warehouses is probably for me like liquor license for Councilwoman Marchman.
Okay.
And so, if you just give me 1 second. And our chair has talked about this, not specifically, but saying we gotta spend more time, I'm paraphrasing, in planning and not rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what always gets me, that the truck traffic is already insane around here. And we're gonna, and we're courting, I think it was the word you used, courting these businesses in all these high-density, high-traffic areas already, as opposed to being down by Plantation, what's that, subdivision down there? Plantation something.
Reed Plantation.
Yeah, instead of being down 61, where there's
Oh,
already
you're
4
talking about,
lanes.
Plantation, what's it called?
Yeah, but you know what I'm
I know what
talking,
you're
that
talking, the
gated.
gated community.
So if they were,
yeah.
if they were down there, you'd have a 4-lane highway instead of everything north of I-20, everything, Punkintown Road and 61 are 2-lane highways. And they could get, the trucks, they could get to and from I-20 without coming into town. Because their facilities and warehouses and transdock is all down south.
Right, and
So,
we don't know.
and this is just me venting, because there's nothing, I'm just interrupting your presentation, is what I'm doing. Because
Well-
I don't get it.
I understand, but we, again, first thing I said, we don't know where this I-3 zone is going to go. But we know that we're taking the right steps here because based off of what you just said, we need to slow down the warehousing, that in the areas that basically are already built out anyway. You think about it, Industrial Boulevard, the entire industrial park, we sold our last industrial vacant lot permit last year, so there's no more industrial coming there because there's nowhere to go. The only that one vacant lot that's actually on industrial and East Industrial Court, I believe is the name of the street. So, and that's a small lot. So, not a lot coming there, but we need to plan for a new park somewhere else. We can't, we don't really know exactly where, and I don't want to say in a meeting, exactly what part of town we're looking at, but we have some ideas. I'm sure the public can see what we're thinking on our current comprehensive plan map right now. It kind of shows what we're thinking about for industrial growth. So, it's of course there's traffic and stuff, and I'm sure we can spend a lot of time on that. But we have to be prepared because it's not going to go away. Industrial is like. It's really like the new shiny thing now because that's where all of the banks are lending to, especially for warehouses. They are never sitting on the market. You never see a sitting vacant warehouse in today's, no matter what size it is. As long as we can put up warehousing space, someone is going to get it. So that's probably my number one call that I get is about warehousing space.
Yeah,
And I
you
tell them
you
the
can
same
see
thing
it.
every time. There's
I mean, you
nowhere.
can see it.
If you can find a vacant industrial lot, then knock yourself out. But
Yeah, it seems like we're soliciting trucking and single-family attached rental property.
that's the only thing the banks will lend to, unfortunately.
The conversations about I-3, just to address exactly what your concerns are, so we can have some control.
Mm-hmm.
There's a recognition that some of these uses, they don't bring a lot of jobs. There might be 1 or 2 people, forklift operator,
That's right.
handles all of this product moving in and out, and lots of traffic coming in and out. So that's been recognized, how to do it. So that's why we're discussing I-3.
This is an effort to gain control where we kind of don't have a lot of control right now, especially if it's just a full permitted use. You can just put up a 100,000 square foot warehouse and not have to go to any public hearing. So that's what we need to fix here,
What do you consider that warehouse off of Connors Road across from Cornhole?
If I'm not mistaken, that area is zoned I-1 on the north side of Connors Road and C1 on the south side of Connors Road. Yeah, that's a zone boundary there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell whether that, it's being used sometimes, and trucks backing in to stop all traffic on Connors Road.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I don't know. I'd have to check with the business license specialist and see exactly what's going on there. If anyone's applied for anything, but
I
no,
thought it was closed at one time.
I did too because all that stuff was gone
Yeah.
at one day. Yeah, and I haven't. I think I've seen someone over there. You know, because when I'm passing by, I don't even think about it. You know, but I think I have seen someone over there using it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's being used, not continuously, but you see trucks backing into there, maybe once a week. So something's going on here, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like a junky place. I mean,
Mhm.
It doesn't look like much of a warehouse, but.
Yeah, it does. That's another reason why if this is a change, if there's ever a change of use there, we can ask for improvements, you know, and bring it up to the current ordinance standards. That's why that's so important, you know. And right now we can still do that, you know, with the current code the way that it is right now. But you know, it's just if it's a smaller tenant or something. If it was something smaller than that building, that's probably not a great example. Then a lot of folks are getting caught up in having to get $5,000 development plans and stuff like that done. So we are trying to be a little fair there.
Okay.
Next one, we revised the front yard setback regulations for all the zoning districts. We overhauled the street classifications. Our current, the way and we'll get into it, but our current street classification map has a lot of street classifications that we don't even have here in Villa Rica, and we're basing front yard setbacks on that, so we just cleaned all that up. We removed recycling from the I-1 and the I-2 zone. We're proposing that in the I-3 zone now exclusively. And lastly, we removed restaurant fast food as a use type in our permitted uses table, and we would rather look at all restaurants the same. You know, because you can be a restaurant and have a drive-through but not be a fast food restaurant. And, you know, and we regulate drive-throughs separately altogether. And so, you know, and also on top of all of that, I have a problem with us in the way that we're, what's the word I can use? How we're distinguishing between a restaurant and a fast food restaurant is basically through the container that they use and the fact that they don't have table service. I don't know, I feel like the uses are too similar for us to try to strike a balance like that when we have so many, basically everyone has to-go containers. And a lot of places don't have table service. So I don't know if we can really base it off of that because it's not gonna change the parking count, it's not gonna change, you know, really anything.
Well, you have that with this just approved Little Caesars downtown, which is just a takeout.
Right.
No, nothing, no eating in.
That's true. You know, that is the case in that particular situation. But again, I feel like it's just too. I don't know if Kevin feels differently about it, but I just feel like when you have two uses that are so similar like that, I mean, the main point is food preparation and you know, basically the serving of food. Not really sure what the difference really is in reality. You know, if we can permit someone to be a restaurant, but we're not going to allow a fast food restaurant, and then we're going to label what a fast food restaurant is.
Well, that's an example of just craziness, because it's just pickup and you got problems with, you know, stacking of cars and entrance onto, you know, key roads.
Some fast food restaurants don't have a drive-through at all, though. You know, so it's like, what are we really getting at with those types of uses, you know?
That may be one of the defining factors, though, is a drive-through, because that creates a whole separate issue. Right, as
But
John's
it's not
saying, like, you got how many cars in the queue, if they exceed the queue, they're on a main road possibly.
Well, in that case, it is a main road.
I mean, look at Evans.
You know,
They can't fit the cars in the queue, so they just start lining up alongside Bankhead Highway.
They do, you're right.
And they come down 10 or 12 cars outside their queue.
So
And that's not what I would call a fast food restaurant, because you can sit down and be served.
Mhm.
But maybe, I'm just saying, maybe the drive-through is can be one of the considerations.
I thought so too, but that would cause more problems than what it would resolve, because we currently already, and in my opinion, we do a pretty good job at regulating drive-throughs.
Yeah.
Our current ordinance is pretty fair, pretty easy to get through, but it also keeps out a lot of wacky driveway ideas, or drive-through ideas. So, if we already have a section that works good and it works okay, and if our definitions don't decipher between it having a drive-through versus not having a drive-through, the drive-through, no matter what, is going to be reviewed by the department anyway. They would still have to meet what those requirements are, but I'm not allowing a use that's considered a fast food restaurant that may not even want a drive-through at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like it's discriminating against uses, the two basically the same uses, and the fruit that we're using to do so is really weak, is really low. So I don't know how you think about it, Kevin, or if you think it's a issue or not, or if we should keep it in there. Either way. Okay.
Is this just, to go back, so is this saying that when it says restaurant, comma, fast food, it means restaurants and fast food, meaning all restaurants?
Nope, it just means fast food restaurants.
Okay,
That's
so
just the way it's labeled.
Fast food
in our
restaurants are
ordinance.
being removed from, in this presentation, fast food restaurants would not be permitted in I-1, I-2, or I-3?
In any zone. It's just completely gone. It's not a thing. It's basically is what I'm saying. It would be, all of them would fall under a restaurant use, and if they need a drive-through, then we would regulate the drive-through separately.
But where are restaurants, fast food restaurants being removed from? Where?
Well, this is just the summary page. We didn't even get into the
Okay, so.
this. All right. Oops. All right. So this is our new use table and what it would look like. I highlighted in green the uses that would be new to the I-3 zone. So that doesn't mean that they're necessarily coming out of another zone. There is one change up there where we would be adding agricultural, I believe it's chemical sales, to the I-2 zone. So that's the only change to the I-2 zone that I was proposing. But the other column, the far right column, is going to have all the new uses and what we're proposing in them, permitted and special exception uses. So, two of those on the bottom on the left there, solar farms and wireless telecommunications facilities, would be special exceptions, just like they are in the I-2 zone today. I'm just duplicating that. And the other uses you see, like public parking, publicly owned buildings, facilities, will be permitted just like they are in other zones, industrial zones. And recreation, active recreation, parks and things is permitted. The agricultural sales, special exception, and I can't see that other one. I think it's essential services major, is permitted. Oopsies. And so this is the rest of the chart here. So I'm gonna have to go a little bit closer here, if you guys don't mind. Okay, so if you look over on the chart on the right side, I know it's a little bit hard to see. I'm gonna bring it right way. The industrial section is the bottom part of that chart, and we want to make a special exception the food and beverage production, manufacturing, heavy and light, power generation facilities, and wait, let me go back up to manufacturing. The reason why that if you see the I-2 zone has it as a permitted use and the I-3 zone has them listed as special exception is because we're not trying to have the new distribution and warehousing area to now also become a manufacturing area as well. We want this to be specific to distribution, warehousing. That's where the pressures are coming from. And that's where we kind of designed the I-3 zone around. So we don't want to kind of muddy it the way that we did with the I-2 zone. We made it a catch one is for all, basically, approach to that one. So where else here? Yeah, power generation facilities, commercial, is a special exception as well. Recycling centers, it would be permitted outright. Truck freight terminals also permitted outright. Warehouse and distribution facilities would be a permitted use, and if you see in the I-1 and I-2 zones, they are now special exceptions. I took it out of the OMI zone. Now you're gonna see restaurant, fast food there at the top, that with the red line going through it. That's because I'm proposing to take it out of the ordinance altogether. So that use wouldn't exist, basically. It would just be a restaurant. So this is what the I-3 zones chart would look like. So this has all of the special, all the special exceptions, all of the permitted uses now. Actually, and I just noticed this, the chart all the way on the right that says special exception required, that's just a permitted use. All of those are not special exceptions, all of those are permitted uses there, so that was a typo on my behalf. But you see also on the left, the bulk regulations, so your setbacks, the minimum lot width, so we want a minimum of 8-acre lots, in this area, so.
Minimum of what, how much?
8 acres.
8, thank you.
And a minimum lot width of 300 feet. So the building that you see on your bottom right would be basically what these buildings would look like. They would be like bigger, the big giant concrete wall, tilt frame, tilt up type of buildings is what we're trying to essentially attract into that one area instead of a bunch of manufacturing and everything else. Yeah, so that's that. Revise the front yard setbacks classification that we talked about. So again, it was a bunch of like categories that we don't even have. So we don't have, so where you see PA, that means principal arterial road, which we don't have any of those in Billerica. We have a minor arterial road, which I'm trying to take out principal and minor, and I'm gonna merge that into arterial, because we do actually have minor arterial roads. Collector roads, they were split between urban collector and rural collector, which we don't have any rural collector roads, so I'm just taking that one out. And the local road one, which is the one we use the most, is 35 feet. That one's staying the same. I took out all the rural road ones. There's no reason to.
Would you mind just give me an example of minor arterial? Anything come to mind?
I would really have to look at our chart. I don't think I put it in.
All right, I don't wanna hold it up.
Yeah, I'd have to look at our map that we have in the ordinance. It is in our zoning ordinance though.
I didn't know if that was like Punkintown or 61 north of 20.
Those are all local roads. 61,
State Road north of I-20.
if I'm not mistaken, 61 is considered a collector road, and 61 south of the city, south of the highway is arterial, and maybe even north of the highway, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
As much traffic as there is on it, all these new arterial.
Yeah. So I revised, I did the same thing for these little charts that you see for all the different zoning districts as you go through so it's nothing really
Oh,
changed
you
there.
used my house in your example.
Oh, did I? All right, so going to chapter 5 now. So I didn't have any changes. This was just the infill development section. It's a really small section of the ordinance. I think it works great. I didn't propose any changes there. Chapter 6, we revised and updated the PUD procedures. So this section, chapter 6, only deals with planning and developments. It gives us our procedures on how to deal with them, how to, basically what the staff is supposed to do in taking one in, what the responsibility of the developer is, as he finishes the project out, etc. So the first one, or the second one there, we clarified what standards apply to PUDs in the absence of specific standards. So once upon a time, not that long ago, we used to have we used to adopt PUDs in this city, and we wouldn't have any develop, or at least we wouldn't have ample enough standards for that PUD. So if the developer, and the way that PUDs is supposed to work really quick is a developer comes forward, says, look, we can't make our project work with any of your existing standard zoning categories, so we need to propose a new zoning category for you that will be specific to us, and this is what we would like to do and see, and the city is supposed to sign off on the concept plan, approve the rezoning, and they're supposed to also adopt basically a set of standards for it, a PUD ordinance is what we call it. And that wasn't done in the past, and that has left us in a problem because we have developments with no standards all over the place. And so it gives, if the problem comes in when I want to review, or I have to review a project that comes up in that PUD ordinance or PUD district, that's an old PUD from a couple years ago or something, similar to how Liberty Point, in a sense, sort of was. We basically can't apply the new zoning ordinance. We have to apply the old zoning ordinance, and a lot of the times, there's questions if we can even do that, because the city passed an ordinance specific for that land, and it's just not sufficient enough. So I'm trying to fix that situation by basically having a backdrop to that in case we have a standard, like a parking lot, for example. We might have one little parking lot standard that the developer never thought of or something like that. It would basically fall onto the new zoning ordinance to fill the gap on whatever the developer missed in the PUD ordinance that they submitted to us. So if they missed something, then they missed something. They have to follow the new zoning ordinance, no matter, even though it's a PUD, the development regulations, chapter 7. So that's just to I guess, have a fail-safe mechanism there in case their PUD ordinances don't work, or if we're searching for standards, et cetera. The third one here is revised language referring to revisions of PUDs, which we'll go over in a second. Corrected the preliminary plat procedures to align with previous city council actions. So we talked about that at the last meeting a little bit in chapter 2, how preliminary plats was given to the staff to basically to be able to approve or deny those plats. So I'm fixing the language in the ordinance for under PUDs that is still is old language basically.
Now, why was that done? I mean, that was part of planning and zoning, and now you're removing that, and it's being turned over to the TAC.
Well, with a preliminary plat, it's not really a whole lot from a zoning perspective, it's not a lot to look at all. We're just basically ensuring that there's just the number of units is on there, et cetera. And I remember from a couple years ago that when the change was made, I want to say that was in 2021, the applicants that we had at the time were complaining at the fact that they even had to go for a preliminary plat, because that's very unusual to go to a preliminary plat, to go to any public hearing at all, to be approved by someone, usually a council or some sort of a board, is normal. But to go through an entire 2-month process or go to the planning commission for that is I don't know another jurisdiction that does it that way. Usually the way you see it is the preliminary plat would get approved by the city council, not at a public hearing, but just as a regular item on their agenda. And the final plat would be approved in office by the staff or by some sort of a TAC or what have you. I would prefer that it's done in the opposite, where the final plat also goes to the staff as well, but also goes to the city council. The preliminary plat instead would basically just be an in-office type of approval for them, because they have to still go for a final plat public notice or public hearing of some form. The way that it is now. So this was very unusual. I don't know where Chris got that language from, because it was very unusual. I've looked as recently as 2 weeks ago to try to find another town that does it that way, and I couldn't find one anywhere in the state. I looked up tons and tons of towns, and everyone usually does their preliminary plats at the city council. But I don't know what, I don't see an incentive to do that. I don't see a reason to do that. It's just literally technical items you're looking for, just making sure the legend is on there, making sure the number of units was on there, the scale is right, and those types of things before they actually get started to be able to submit a construction drawing.
So,
us.
so what's the purpose of moving it to a different, in other words, if it's unusual to have it, period, at that stage, preliminary, what's the purpose of going from P and Z to TED? I mean, why move it if it's unusual to have anyway?
Because, well, being that preliminary plats are really technical plats, the technical advisory committee would be the right people to review a technical plat, because it's all looking at technical items. It's not even so much the ethos of the project, if you will, like you would with a construction drawing set. That's really what you want to look at. That's the ones that I scrutinize very heavily.
So this group is gonna have professional background, training, experience, expertise in these areas?
Yeah, so we currently are doing this right now, because we already changed, the city council made that change back in 2021. But that would consist of it will be myself in planning and zoning, the fire marshal or fire chief comes, the community development director really heads that whole committee, Tracy. There's water and sewer also, they're a part of it. The downtown Main Street is involved. So it's a pretty big, it's a lot of eyes, a lot of people who have to sign, basically, well, the people who have to sign off is the city engineer and myself, but that's basically kind of how that really works, with preliminary plats. So all we're really looking at, again, is just technical items. It's not even so much going into just making sure the zoning conditions and things are actually being stipulated on there, and the plat is in the right format that it's supposed to be, stuff like that. Next one here is revised language throughout to refer to preliminary plat and development plan procedures as the same. Because as of right now, we're missing that language in our ordinance, which is confusing everyone. But we need to equate them for the purposes of the PUD, at least, PUD language. We revised the roles of the Planning Commission and the Technical Advisory Committee. You'll see what I mean by that. We just had to switch some language around. It was a mess, the language here in this section.
Why is there nowhere in the ordinance the definition of the TAC? What it is, who the members, their responsibility? Should that not be part of the ordinance? The same as planning commission is, the same as this new school board thing is.
I never noticed, I never realized that we didn't have a definition of it, or it wasn't defined somewhere.
It's not defined that I've seen, and I've brought that up before, and it just seems to me that ought to be defined if you're going to be using it and replacing some things that planning and zoning might have had with this group. Define it, what it is.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I agree. I'll write that down so there's a comment.
It seems to me it ought to be fairly early in the write-up.
I agree. I feel like I've seen language somewhere that gave a blurb about the technical advisory committee in there, but I couldn't say that for sure. So I'm gonna check on it, and if we don't have it, then we should definitely put it in there for sure. Technical advisory.
What its responsibilities are and who the members are. And
Yeah, I feel like that's in there somewhere. But I'll find it. I'll let you know.
Okay.
though. Okay, I'll
Alright.
say email John. Okay. We removed the option for alternative submittals for a final plat to align with our process better. So if they, and we'll get into this, but if they submitted a development plan to us instead of the preliminary plat, then they don't have to get a final plat. So there is no alternative submittal. That's the only submittal that they'll do as a part of the process, is the development plan. And they would submit a plat to us in the option that it's a subdivision or something that has multiple lots in it, for example. Lots, it's multiple residential lots, that would usually go through a plat process. If it's something that's a commercial development or an industrial development or a multifamily development, those would be usually development plans that are submitted. And we would approve the development plan and then go approve the construction plans. And then that's really the end of the project. They don't have to come back for a final plat. So we just, because the current language had it kind of in reverse. They had it where a development plan was the final plat. Which I guess is kind of the same thing, essentially, because you're only reviewing it once. But the point is, I needed to clean the language up because it was like all over the place. It was doing this, so.
The TAC is defined. Chapter 13.
Oh. Okay. That's the definition section.
Where is it?
Chapter 13, the definition section. Current ordinances, page 291.
All I see is proposed section 1301 definitions.
Oh,
So-
he means in the actual ordinance
Current
book,
ordinance.
the current ordinance.
It is defined in the current ordinance.
Well, I'll look.
I'll look too, as I didn't know. All right, so our next one here, introduction, or introduced a subsection to restrict amendments to concept plans and final plats and provide regulations surrounding major and minor changes. So let's say I'm Joe, developer, I'm midway through a project, through a development, and I wanna make some changes to the concept plan, right? Usually I would file an alteration to PUD application, automatically if I want to make basically any changes right now. We don't think that that's reasonable because we have a lot of PUDs, that can have changes to it, minor changes we're talking. So we needed to spell out what is a minor change versus a major change, because if it's a major change, you need to go back through the process. If it's a minor change, and you just need to move a couple small things, then they should really not have to, if it's something that's not really gonna change fundamentally the concept plan, then, it's, better that they are able to continue building and continue, going on, just through staff, of course, looking at it, but, the last one there is revise the PUD flow chart. So obviously we need to change our flow chart if we were to change our PUD process here. So, oops, this thing has a little delay to it, so I'm sorry. Okay.
So, Ron, are you gonna be through with this by breakfast?
Soon, we're almost done.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Got somewhere else to go?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you guys. Clarified and reworded the option for preliminary plat approval, or the approval of a development plan based on the type of development. So I inserted the city council as the approving authority of PUD final plats in lieu of the TAC. So I took out the TAC in some sections here. Like for example, for plat approval, the third step in the process is to submit either a development plan or a preliminary plat. And I define exactly what those are, revise that process. I just stuck in a sentence there that said a development plan should be submitted only for those PUDs that are not proposed to be subdivided further or consists of a mix of commercial or industrial and residential uses. So if there's a mix of these different things, basically a development plan is what you'd want to submit. Wait a minute, hold on, I don't know if that reads right though. A development plan should be submitted only for those PUDs that are not proposed to be subdivided further, that's right, or consists of a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential uses. Yes, that's right. It does read right. Okay, sorry. I had to slow down for a moment there. Preliminary plat, I stuck in a sentence there. A preliminary and final plat should only be submitted for PUDs that are detached residential single family as the primary use of all structures. So that's your typical subdivision. Final plats, I took out technical advisory committee, and the reviewing folks for that should be should be the city council. I don't think, we should just be the only ones reviewing that. I think the city council should probably, review that. So the relationship between a PUD ordinance and the zoning ordinance. So there's one existing section here, it says what the PUD ordinance's requirements are. So this is what we require for anyone, and these are the standards we would use when we're reviewing the PUD later on during plan review. But I wanted to add that other section that says, should the PUD ordinance not address specific development standards and subsections as set forth within section 7 and section 9 of this chapter, then those standards shall apply. So that's the development regulations and the architectural standards.
Okay?
Got it? Okay. You had a question?
No, I thought you asked me if I got it, so I was just,
Oh, okay. I did.
yeah, I was just letting you know I got it.
Feedback from applicant after P and Z meeting. There's a section in here, for PUDs. It says, following the Planning and Zoning Commission approval, the petitioner shall submit revised copies of the PUD district ordinance and the concept plan that address the comments and concerns of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I switched that language to may. So if there's any like revisions or anything like that, they can submit. Basically, it's an option for them to actually, submit that to us. And this is kind of taken out of context with the other sections, so I'm trying to remember back really quick what exactly this had to deal with, and I don't have that ordinance in front of me. Can you go to 61570? I just want to make sure I don't miss something here. I see what I was trying to do here. Sorry, you guys. All right, so this whole subsection, just talks about the planning commission's responsibilities as a part of a PUD ordinance, holding a public hearing, what decisions can be rendered or recommendations can be rendered from the commission. And then it gets down to this section where it says revisions. So if we passed or recommended approval of a PUD district ordinance and a concept plan, I was proposing to change it from shall to may, because being that we've already passed the planning commission process by that point, which is usually when you would get any sort of change to the PUD, is after the planning commission's process is over, and if they wanted to make a change to that ordinance, they would basically be going to the city council and then be giving you guys the revised copy of the ordinance, which at that point it renders it pointless because it's not going to be coming back to the commission to be voted on. It's going to go to the city council at that point to be voted on. So that was my thought process here behind changing it from shall to may, because it's making a requirement And as a staff member, I'm not really sure what the purpose of it really would be if this office is the one that's gonna be getting the PUD ordinance and putting it on file. We would just have to go off of whatever the city council is gonna approve at that point, both you and I, both. So this is a really minor change, but
I mean,
I
May
wouldn't.
gives the option, but if it's already been approved by planning, a decision's been made, an advisory decision has been made by planning and zoning, they're with the council, they're not, it almost seems like this is really unnecessary altogether. If it's not a requirement, why?
yeah, and we have a lot of sections like that in here. I think we kinda leave it in there, I guess my thought is, I think we leave it in there as guidance for the staff and, I guess the public too, but really the staff. And because there's some times where, we're not really sure, or, you know, what can and can't be done because the ordinance itself is not so great. But there's a lot of sections like this that aren't full-blown requirements, but it does tell us, or give us guidance on what we should be thinking about.
Even P and Z, I won't say be confused by it, but you have something and you yay or nay or yay with conditions, moves on to council, and then a month later, you get a revised, they decide they may do it, so they do it, and they submit a revised version, and then P and Z thinks it's coming back to them to review
Right.
the changes. Anyway.
And sometimes they do, this stuff does come back to the P and Z, if the council remands it back and wants a, you know, if there's new information that's filed, but that's not gonna change. That changes no matter what,
Right.
So.
Yeah, this seems reasonable.
Revise the preliminary plat procedures as we talked about, just for some consistency, some of the words were all messed up. So this is the part you guys, I think, we're talking about when it comes to the technical advisory committee, the planning and zoning commission. So it talks about, a vicinity map, at a scale approved by the planning commission, for example. And it talks about in the top, under application, an application for preliminary plat shall be filed, with the secretary of the planning and zoning commission by the owner. Goes through the entire process of what they need to submit, so this is all we're looking at, is just the submittal requirements, the stuff that we have to check in the office for preliminary plats. Some of it at least is in this list. And so, you know, this is what the planning commission was looking at for preliminary plats before. You know, so we feel that in the office, we can identify the scale, we can identify the zoning districts. It was really setting someone back 30 days to come to the commission for technical items, which is really, again, unheard of. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Preliminary plat or development plan, again, I just want to be consistent there, to just put in preliminary plat every time I see, development plan. And to that technical advisory committee, I took out some language there, as well. The department shall inform the petitioner of the time, date, and place of the planning and zoning commission meeting. That's because we don't send the notice out anymore. The applicants send the notice out themselves, so we don't actually have to notice them. They need to notice everyone else. So that, I would just want to take that out to be consistent. So this is continued, that same section just continued down more. We talk about the, technical advisory committee meeting being that there's no public hearing required, for a preliminary plat. And we just, again, changed the language again, just continue to add in development plan, or where planning commission was, we would replace with the, technical advisory committee, for this section. And, yeah, so.
So, just wanna, sorry, planning and zoning is not gonna get the preliminary plats. They're going to TAC.
Yes.
Okay. But when it does come to planning and zoning, we'll get a plat that's already been approved by TAC.
Well, we wouldn't get, you guys wouldn't get plats here, at all. That's the way that it is now. You guys would get rezonings, annexations, you know,
So we get the site plans, like we see it's next to this building, this corner, or here's something like that, but not the actual plat itself.
No, not the plat. You know, the preliminary plat doesn't come until later in the process, and, again, it's just kinda establishing some basics, for the project. And then the construction drawings are the big drawings, the ones that, you know, lays everything out.
Okay.
Final plat revisions, minor. So, interesting thing here, you know, we talk about the review of final plats and, you know, we revise the process here. What actions can be taken? Right now it's technical advisory committee, but, I think that the final, and the way that we've been doing it, as we saw last week, we have final plats that need to go to the city council. It's not anywhere in the state law that I can see. The word plat doesn't even exist in the Zoning Procedures Act, so that doesn't help. But essentially, we don't think that it needs to have a public hearing, but we do think that it needs to be voted on in the public realm. And so that's what we're trying to set up now, instead of just approving the plats. The way that this is written, I would never agree that the staff should have basically the final say and basically the final thing that's approved before they get their building, permits to put a structure up. I think that needs to go in front of a council, so they have some ownership of it as well. I removed the language for alternative plat submittal language because it was just all messed up and just a mess. It was a disaster, and I just cleaned that up, and just everything that we just went over is what's replacing that.
So this is, what you just said would be the alternative?
Yeah, that development plan versus preliminary plat submittal as the first step. That is going to take the precedence over what it is now, which is, you have to submit a preliminary plat, and then you submit a final plat or a development plan, because a lot of these developments would just be submitting a development plan.
Because basically, this, removing this says there is no alternative.
Right. Yeah, there's really, there is an alternative, but it comes earlier in the process, and I spelled out basically a new process to that. So the ordinance had some competing language in it. So this comes from our friend, the UDC, that we haven't seen in so long, but it was such a great section, believe it or not, in the UDC. But this addresses PUDs that change. We just had one of these, right, that came forward about a PUD that went way off the concept plan track of what they submitted. So we need to definitely have language to address changes to PUDs. So that language I ported right out of the UDC because it actually works really, really good. There was no need for us to have gotten rid of it in 2020 because it really did function. But basically, we have a running list there of all the different things that would check off a minor change versus a major change to a development. And so if there is a change to it, then that would trigger an alteration of the PUD application that would need to be filed by the applicant. So no new language really. It's language that we've had on the books here in the past that really should have stayed on the books. Everyone good? And this is just the new flow chart. So this is the city attorney's office asked me to put a new flow chart together, just explaining the PUD and the regular rezoning application process. This is the one for PUDs, and you'll see later the other flow chart for the rezoning process. But this is our entire process. This is really what happens when you get through the plat process as I'm proposing it to be today. It's a little small to see on here, so you might want to definitely take a look at the printed. I think the printed version is bigger, the print. So just take a look at that, see the process. But I did run through it a couple times just to make sure that it was the way that I explained it in the other section. So Chapter 7, the big section. We're finally here. So Chapter 7 has to do with development regulations, like we said. These are the regulations that are applied during the construction plan process when they submit their big roll of plans. So 95% of the time, I deny the first set of construction drawings. It's hard to get through my plan review because I am a stickler for the code, everything to the letter. We inserted new language for changes of use, which we ported over from the earlier section from 1.04. We revised stacking spaces for drive-throughs to be consistent throughout the ordinance because it says in one section you're supposed to have 7 spaces, another it says you're supposed to have 8 sections or 8 spaces, so we just made them the same. Introduced expanded parking requirements for warehousing and distribution or flex tenant spaces, so we became much more specific with these uses and their parking requirements. Classified redevelopment sites as undeveloped or underdeveloped in section 7.07. We added additional amenity options for single-family developments, which should have been in there all along. We moved portions of 9.02, 9.03, and 9.04 into 3 new subsections of Chapter 7 to address layout and site planning for residential, commercial, and industrial uses. So there's no new language there. All I did was just move something from the architectural section of the ordinance to the development regulations section because it didn't have anything to do with architecture. It was all about site layout. The last one there is I introduced the warehouse distribution and logistics layout and planning section of the development regulations. So this is the, oh, yes, sir.
So, sorry, just on the drive-through, now that's not saying restaurants, we were talking about before, that's just drive-throughs. So you could be a fast food restaurant, or restaurant, we haven't defined fast food, or you could be a dry cleaner.
That's right. It could be a bank ATM.
Okay.
So it's all those different uses are called out.
So even somebody, like if I had a State Farm office with a drive-through so somebody could drop off a check, I would have to have as many available in the stack as I would if I was a Starbucks?
No, it's a different, different table or different amount that's required
Okay.
for, depending on what the type of use is.
So it's standard by the use,
Mhm.
not just standard for drive-throughs?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. So new change of use language from before. We don't have to go over this. This is just the same. Actually, you know what? I don't think we did go over this part of it. Yeah, this is new. Okay, so I split our current change of use section. Just gives a blanket statement that says all uses being established need to follow this section of the ordinance. Yada yada. So I'm proposing to split that up. So basically, all I'm doing is verbalizing the chart that was in the very beginning that we went through with the 3 examples. So I put here, all changes of use proposed within existing structures on developed parcels shall be exempt from all development regulations within this ordinance except parking requirements. All changes of use proposed within new structures or structures expanded beyond 35% of the existing structure's square footage on developed parcels shall be subject to all applicable regulations within this ordinance as set forth herein. And lastly, all changes of use proposed within existing buildings, new buildings, or buildings expanded beyond 35% of the existing structure's square footage and located on an underdeveloped or undeveloped lots shall be subject to all applicable regulations within this ordinance. So all I did was just verbalize that. Stacking spaces for drive-through businesses. The new text just says it should meet the requirements set forth within Table 8.2 stacking space schedule and all applicable regulations within Section 8.09. And that's because in this section 7.02 that I'm proposing to change, it has its own stacking table. And when you get to Table 8.2, it's a completely different stacking table. So we had to pick one, and we decided to get rid of this one. So, we didn't want to have competing standards there. We removed references to parking lots in special areas because we don't have special areas in the city. I think this was a copy and paste from someone else's ordinance or something, because that doesn't exist, and I don't even know what that means. So we introduced new parking standards for warehouse distribution and flex space. So the old one, as you can see, wasn't as specific when it came to warehousing facilities and logistics in the distribution facilities. So I proposed a new table there, or new proposed requirements. It's quite lengthy, but essentially it's definitely more robust than the one that's on the left there. But basically for vehicle parking, I separated out vehicle parking from truck parking for logistics and distribution uses. So they have different requirements based off of the square footage of the building instead of the employees, because it's really hard for us in the office to know how many employees are going to be in a warehouse or a distribution. It just doesn't work. So the best way to do this is off of the square footage itself of the building. There's only so many employees that can work within the square footage, so without that might make more sense.
Ron, is there very much more of this that you have to go through? Because I think there's some other pretty important things that we need to discuss.
Yes, if you guys are okay with this, or if you guys want to just get to the other items, we can. I think we have,
I'm okay with this where we are, and let's move on.
yeah, I don't know if there was anything else that was a hot button. All I did was add amenities,
Yeah.
some existing amenities that we have for multifamily buildings for single family. And we, a redeveloped site shall be considered any site that is not considered developed. Yeah, so we also did the same thing with the developed site thing here, added language. Moved and separated layout and site planning like we talked about, just moved that one from section 9 to 7. I did it 3 times here, as you can see. I introduced a section 7.20, which is a warehousing and distribution layout and site planning section, which is new language here. It's pretty similar to the I2 zone stuff, just, again, just talking about basic site layout. Quite a lot of it here. Now this is section 8.27, which is up for tonight to be voted on after the presentation. All we're doing is just taking out the road frontage requirement of being on a major arterial road, which since we didn't have any in town, or on a state highway, because it just severely limits the amount of liquor stores that can actually, or where the liquor stores can locate here in the city. We introduced section 9.05, which is warehouse, distribution, and logistics architectural standards now. So these are the architectural standards for that district. Similar to what we did with the I2 zone.
Yeah, I think those 2 sections you provided us
Yes.
with written material, so we've reviewed those. So.
This is the joint committee language. So I just added the language that was sent over from the attorney's office.
Okay,
Added the
I think this is really critically important, but before you get to that, I'd like to go back a couple of comments on chapters, I guess it's chapter 2, about planning and zoning. If you go back to planning and zoning, conduct of meetings, I would like to add, it says under, says the Planning and Zoning Commission shall have a regularly scheduled meeting at least once a month and more often if necessary for the transaction of business. That's what's stated now. I would like to add, or other discussions, training, etc. Because we've been talking about planning and zoning doing their own training. So I think we need to add some verbiage to that section.
Sure. Do you know what section number that was?
Yeah, it's section 203, 2.03, item 3, conduct of business, or conduct of meetings. Just to include, because we were talking about could we have special meetings, and you said no, we couldn't have, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Sure, yeah.
and then another one that I would like you to consider is in section 1105. And I don't quite know where to put this, but planning and zoning may not be required to consider any material provided within 24 hours of a scheduled meeting. You know, we got into this with the Highlands thing. And it just seems to me that if we don't get the material in advance, because some of us do like to visit these sites, it seems to me we ought to have a limitation on what we can do.
John, would you object to changing that to 48 hours instead of 24? I think, I just don't think 24 hours is enough time.
Well, certainly wouldn't give us enough time to go visit the
I'd say
facility.
48 hours if you don't mind.
Well, it'll end up being up to Ron, but yeah.
Well, we're not
48
open
's
on
fine.
Sundays, and you guys meet on Tuesdays, so, I guess by default, it's
Well,
kind of
we could
24
always
hours.
Just, if it's not in, then we have to wait till the whole next,
To the next one.
Month.
And make it
Next
two,
week, the next
two
month.
business days or something like
no,
that.
like the whole next month.
Yeah, but depending on what it is it one page, is it several pages? Does it require a second visit to the site?
Well,
Even-
for
even if you've
instance,
been
look,
there,
look at
because-
Highlands. Highlands, I
is-
think,
Is a good example,
Yeah.
but if,
and that's what it's
if
instituted
the
is.
P and Z board, commission doesn't have enough time to, felt they had enough, did not have enough time to review it, somebody's gonna make a motion to table it until we have time, or may make a motion to table it, because we haven't had time to
Well-
take it in. And it
And,
is gonna
you
be
know-
then postponed to the following month if that passes.
You know, many of our members have lives other than, what revolves around planning and zoning. And so if you have a job, if you have other commitments, a day is certainly not gonna be enough time in a lot of cases.
Personally,
the-
I don't think 48 hours is too much to ask.
Do you think,
Yeah,
Do you-
2 business days.
do you think then that it would make sense for you to just hang on to that power? To where it's not an actual written like rule in our ordinance, but it's simply up to the commission if they want to accept the information at that hearing, or if you want to put the hearing off to another day.
Well, we could do that, and again, I go back to Highlands as an example. I was ready to table that, except one or two of the council said they had received the material, and they wanted to go ahead, so, but yeah, we could do that, so.
Well, and putting it off on us just makes us the bad guys as far as the developer's concerned or anybody, so, let's put the onus on them, to do business in a good business-like fashion.
Okay. I have nothing against it, so whatever.
Well, but-
I don't think it's one or the other, whether it's 24 hours or 48 hours, the commission still has the opportunity to table it.
Yeah.
Even if you had even if you got 72 hours, if
Yeah.
you haven't had a chance to look at it, for whatever reason, the commission still has somebody can make a motion to
Yeah,
table.
yeah. Well, let's try it and,
Okay, yeah,
So-
I'll see if I can, put some language in there to that effect.
but again, are you ready to get into the joint committee?
Yep.
Okay. Off the top, I've got some significant concerns about this committee. I mean, I identified, first of all, I talked to Clint Chance at the library a couple of days ago.
Was you talking to Mike or something? Yeah.
I talked to Clint Chance a couple of meetings ago, and he said that they have now changed the county number of appointees to 2, whereas everything we say here is the commission would have 1 member. Has that been notified?
Anything really with this item, I might have to need Kevin's help with this, because I know his office, and David Mecklen's office has been, a little bit more, involved in actually crafting that language for the county.
Kevin, are you aware, have the county come back and asked for 2 appointees? Clint seemed to think that they had.
I'm not aware of that.
Well, apparently it's going to come up somewhere along the line. I don't know. But my major concern is can an elected official be appointed to this committee? Because they can't be assigned to P and Z. P and Z can have no elected official on it. But can this committee?
I think under, I don't think so.
It's not spelled out anywhere that I saw.
There, but I think it's spelled out in our charter. I have to look at our charter, but I don't think elected officials can serve on those committees.
So the appointees by the council cannot be council members. And that would really be a blatant,
Well, they can be on HPC, no?
no. Well, maybe HPC, I don't know.
I thought I remember reading that somewhere, so you might just want to clarify, be sure about.
Yeah, I don't think an elected official could be on the HBC or this board.
Well, I know they can't be on P and Z, but it's not defined on this new committee. And the same is true of the school board. School board members are elected, are they not?
They are.
So therefore, who are the school board members going to appoint? Same is true of the county commissioners. They're elected. So who are going to be the people on this new committee?
They'll make the appointments. The elected officials can make the appointments.
I would submit maybe the council ought to consider adding some planning and zoning members to the new commission, the new committee. Since that committee does not report to us, but reports directly to the council. Doesn't have anything to do with us.
So it does say that the city council will appoint members and the school board will appoint.
And the county will appoint.
But should it say that are not elected, this wouldn't be proper verbiage, but that they can appoint people, but not from, that are elected, holding positions of elected office? Should it stipulate that that's an exclusion?
I think it may already be,
Well, it's not in the material that we were presented.
I think it's gonna be in our charter. And that's what I'm looking at right now.
Well, this is going to be interesting as to who the heck these groups are going to appoint. What's their awareness of what's going on? Now, I know there's nothing that can be done to revise this new committee because it's all tied in with the TAD and whatever. But there's nowhere that I can see in the state that requires or allows this committee. As planning and zoning is defined by the state, but the state doesn't define anything about this. The only thing it says is this is as a result of, the TAD, that we formed this committee. So the state doesn't,
They cannot make zoning decisions.
Sorry, say it again, please?
They will not have the authority to make any zoning decisions.
well, but they'll recommend changes.
They're just advising like P and Z.
Yeah.
But
But again, they advise and we advise, and they're two separate things that go to the council presumably at about the same time. But which one is going to dominate? Who knows? Depends on who the appointees are in many respects. So I just think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this definition.
Yeah, I'll try to find out some of those answers, for you guys, but this is really something kind of handed down to my office. I didn't really have much to do with as far as the, picking who's on the committee or anything like that. That was much ahead of me, but I'll try to find out.
I mean, the verbiage that is presented to us is almost identical to what is provided for planning and zoning. It's almost verbatim, except it points out the committee as opposed to planning and zoning. But the big issue seems to me, who gets appointed to this committee.
Okay. All right, so, For interest of time, I'll make sure I can try to get an answer for that. I have it written down here. I'm gonna try to zoom through here. This is just the definition section, just the definitions that we talked about already. But I also put a definition of package store. That's another one. So, that we didn't have defined, but we wanna open up package stores. And that's it. So if you guys are ready, I did wanna vote on at least 3 of these items tonight, but if you're ready to vote on everything tonight, be my guest, please. But I definitely need to get a vote, for 8.27, 2.02, and 11.05. So.
What are those?
The 8.27 is the liquor store section where I just took out that little line.
Yeah.
And section 2.02 is the section on the joint city school board committee. And 11.05 is also on the school board committee, but it's also another section dealing with all our development standards and requirements. The last thing that we just looked at there.
Well, I don't see how we can approve the school board items with the things that are up in the air.
That's what I've been wondering.
Can I interrupt a minute? The clerk just told me that, she did not recall, and I don't recall an actual adoption of the agenda. So if
I
we-
can't hear you, Kevin.
I don't think there was ever a vote to adopt the agenda. So if we go ahead and adopt the agenda
Well,
before we vote on it.
yeah, we approved it, maybe we didn't vote on it, so.
Yeah, I think we did. I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And the clerk just didn't have any record of that, and I don't have any record of that.
Yeah, they didn't vote. They just said it's approved.
Do we need to go back and,
If
And
we can
vote?
just, I guess, stop now and then just do the vote, take the vote really quick, if that's
okay,
okay.
may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
as
approved.
presented?
I mean,
Second.
so moved.
All in favor? Okay.
Yeah, the second, and voted aye.
Great, all right.
There was a railroad outside and a railroad in here.
And just another comment, I've reviewed the charter, and I don't think there is a restriction, I thought it was in the charter, so I don't think that's there.
Well, I will entertain a motion to approve item A3, the ordinance revision, section 8.27 for liquor stores, package stores, and liquor outlets.
So moved.
Second?
Second,
All in favor? Okay, so that, we've approved that section. I'm just concerned about the next 2 items, because they relate to the school board committee. And I'm not ready to approve those.
Why don't we table that until next month?
It's going to come before council, I assume.
Probably on the next agenda.
Well, then if they act on it, it takes it out of our hands.
Yeah.
well, is it an option to approve with conditions? And the condition being that it clearly stipulates that no one that is appointed is a public office, can we do that the same way we do the development?
It's a possibility.
Well, we could do that or vote against it. So, but voting against it is irrelevant because it's going to go to council, so. I think it might be appropriate to do it with conditions, so.
That might see the light, it might see the light of day.
And my major concern is the elected officials, as to who's going to be appointed to these committees. So-
Might throw a condition in there of somebody being from P and C. Can't hurt.
Well, I think they certainly ought to consider that. So I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance, section 2.02 and 11.05, with the condition that there be detailed definition of who the members are, what their terms are, and that consideration be given to appointing members of planning and zoning to this new commission.
And that no one be elected official.
And, yeah, that was the original point, yeah, no elected officials, so, would anybody make that motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Is that appropriate, Kevin?
Can we do two and one?
Um,
We need another one for the,
they were separate items.
We need to vote on separate items. I think that motion only dealt with section 2.02, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
He did say specifically 2.02
Yeah,
and
I
11.05.
did, but, you know, I think it's better if it's separated out.
Okay.
So let's change that motion to just section 2.02.
All right, I amend my
Okay.
motion to just section 2.02.
In a second?
for 2.02?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Then,
Then section 11.05,
yeah,
same motion.
With same conditions?
Yeah.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So those are the three items that you felt we had to,
It
approved
was,
today.
yeah. And if you guys feel comfortable with moving to the other items, you can just let me know, but it's no pressure. If you guys want to, table those till the next time, you can. If you're not ready to take a vote, because I know that's a lot of material. We just went through 7 chapters, half the ordinance.
well, again, in looking through those, the two comments that I made about changes were the only things that I saw. And that was the addition of, special meetings for planning and zoning and the
Yeah.
addition of the 48 hours or whatever we meant. Those were the only two items that I saw in reviewing that material.
Yep.
So
got
I don't
you.
know that, do we need any further discussion of that? Do you see anything?
Not for me.
Doug?
I'm sorry.
You see any further discussions that we need to have on chapters 1 to 7 and section 9.05?
Not from my side.
No.
So I guess pretty much up to you. We're
can
satisfied
vote.
with.
Oh, well, on the administrative section.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, you did say that.
I think we need to, I need to talk to staff about some changes in the administrative section.
Okay.
Um,
I have another
Does it
question
make
that relates maybe to the administrative section.
think about it.
I'm sorry.
Concern again about the terms for planning and zoning. As stated in this ordinance, the terms for at least two of us show ended in 2022. So are we still official members of planning and zoning? Were we extended automatically to 2000? If it's a 2-year term, are we extended to 2024?
It's just until the seat is filled again. So until you either resign from the commission or the city council basically would have to remove you and then appoint somebody else on. So until one of those two actions happen, you'd basically be in your seats indefinitely.
Well, it would say if this is approved, and it will be by council, because they want the 2-year term, two of us, wards 3 and 4, have our terms shown in this ordinance as ending at 1/1/2022. And so therefore, we're on, I guess, the current term expiring in 1/1/2024.
Essentially, I guess. I guess you would be, but you haven't been appointed to that new term. That's kind of how we all ended up getting, how it ended up getting all messed up to begin with, was the fact that the city council was going, years essentially without addressing every single seat on the commission or making an appointment when these terms ran out. So we ended up having a bunch of seats that would come up all at one time, and then they're like, well, how did this happen? And I'm like, well, you would have had, this is a maintenance item, you gotta maintain this annually. If not, then it's just gonna pile up. So I mean, I know the attorney's office has been really trying to get it all straightened out, but this was again just handed down to me in a sense. But I thought that it, it essentially would make some sense to have a basis point. If this was to be used as it was explained to me as a basis point on where to establish the next terms and where they're supposed to be built off of, then this would be, I think, a workable solution at least. The ones that say ended in 2022, that might be because this got started way back at the end of last year, this whole process.
Well, I'm not sure, because at one time I think it said 2023. But at any rate, the way it's defined, and if this gets approved, our terms expired in 2022. So I guess we're on a 2-year extension of 2022.
Not to throw too fine a point on it or whatever, but you have members whose term is expired, looks like is expired. And then everybody is supposed to be 2 years, but you also have members that were appointed in the beginning of this year, expiring at the end of '23. So that were given a 1-year term, or an 11-month term, or, because not everybody starts January 1 of 1 year, and then December 31st of,
Well, it goes back to when that position was first appointed, as to what
Yeah,
term.
so
it
if
was.
you were January of '23, then you shouldn't be expiring in December of '23.
Unless that term was originally,
That's what this-
Held by someone else,
Yeah.
right?
Okay,
So
so you're
if-
taking over, but if not, then
if not, it's a 2-year term.
it's a 2-year term.
So in your case then, if you were, since your term is ended essentially, or will end, let's say it's ended, and you stay in your seat another 9 months, not a full term of the next one, the next person that starts is going to fill that seat all the way to whatever that next end date is. Because they're actually being appointed to it. You haven't been appointed to that new term per se, but you're still in your same term for indefinite. But we still needed to mark somewhere in time. We had to have a mark.
Right.
Like you said, it's a maintenance issue.
It is.
E-
Yeah.
Every time somebody comes in, leaves, quits, resigns, something, or goes the 2 years, these need to be
Well,
updated.
presumably this will satisfy the council if this gets approved as it's written. My only question was, those of us who, the detail shows us as not being, on our term having expired.
Sure.
So-
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll hold off on the other sections then. I mean, if it's either that or can we vote on all the other chapters and then leave section chapter 2 out? It's up to you guys, or if you want to just bring it all back next time and we can talk about it.
I'm not sure we need to bring it back again. I think we just said we're all pretty,
Just do 1 and then 3 through 7, basically everything else for chapter 2. Or do you think that should kind of go with chapter 11?
well, chapter 2 would include the new committee, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that because it's like if we passed 11.05 and we passed section 2.02 separately, so.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so that should be okay, this joint school committee thing. It's just a matter of the technical advisory committee, city council, and planning commission sections that was in there.
Right.
Still be a bit of change, a little bit.
Yeah, I guess if we could just hear your reaction to those suggestions. I don't think we need to go over all of the
Yeah, I
the
agree.
detail.
Okay.
Because again, we've had that for several months, so hopefully the commission has reviewed it, so.
Okay.
Okay,
That notice it in the paper, so it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
we ready for new business, or
Well, I was just gonna see what we were gonna do with this last, I was waiting for Kevin to
Okay.
review it. If you're not fully comfortable, Kevin, it's okay, we can,
My only concern is anything that deals with a public hearing, there's some new requirements, so just wanna make sure none of the sections we're approving has language discussing the conduct of our hearings.
something,
Sounds like time for a bathroom break.
sure, you guys wanna take a like a 2-minute recess or something, just like a,
It's 7 minutes till 8 o'clock. If we're out of here by 8, I'll put you on my Christmas list. I mean, really, do we still need to stay here and belabor all of this?
well, we're already here. They can either do that, but they're saying that they're ready to vote on it now, but there might be a couple legal hangups, so we just wanted to do a last minute check before we, walk out of here, and we could've did it. Yeah, it was, yeah, 1 through 7, then I have a new section 9.05, the warehouse distribution and logistics design standards. And, and then the definition section, section 13, just adding some definitions. Probably chapter 6 might have some portions of the plus section. Let's just table it, I think. I think it's
Okay.
better to table all 3 of those. Yeah, because I want to take a look at it and maybe spend some more time with Kevin on it. So
All right.
we can I don't have any new business, so
Okay.
nothing really happening. Really, I'm just cleaning up the office essentially while I have a break, while I have a moment to do so, getting everything organized. So
Just one other point, Kevin, make sure about this thing that I heard about 2 county commissioners being added instead of 1. That came from Clint Chance, who is probably the guy who's logically to be appointed from the county, except he's an elected official. Boy, it's gonna be crazy as to who gets appointed to this committee.
yeah, and I have no idea. I have no idea who they're looking at.
Well, again, the whole thing came up, through the TAD, and that's how it all started, as a concession to the school board. And then the county jumped in, so. But it's been approved, so we're gonna have something.
Yeah, or at least there's that. At least there's that.
Well, I guess we can adjourn since we don't have a full quorum. Guess he'll be back shortly. Any other
We can ask for public comments.
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we've never seen this room so full as the last council meeting, so.
Oh, yeah.
Did y'all attend?
I'm sorry?
Did you attend? Council?
Yeah,
No. I looked at it live streaming.
yeah, me too. I watched a little on TV.
I saw it live in stereo.
Yeah, you were here. So
It was long.
went
I
till,
had to do the 1 o'clock session, which was much long, also pretty long.
Here he is.
So it was like 10 hours. We're ready to adjourn, sir.
Did I miss anything?
yeah, you did. Well, you didn't miss it. We're waiting for you to adjourn.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Hold on. We didn't do a motion to table it to the next
Okay.
those 3 items. We have to do that.
Okay, I'll entertain a
Seconded.
motion to entertain
so moved.
tabling, chapter, what is it, chapters 1 to 7, 905, and 1301?
Yeah, so moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Was
Then-
that, sorry, just to be clear, was that to give council time to look at look at the administrative?
Yeah. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All right, second,
All right.
all in favor? Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Well, thank you very much, Ron, Kevin.
Well done, Ron.
Renee.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work, you guys.
It's very good, very clear, good.
I tried to make it clear.
Well, it's a lot of work.